They hadn't just tested her patience. They'd made her a target, right there in front of 20 recruits. A staff sergeant drove his knee hard into her ribs, the same ribs rebuilt after Wantung, Koran province. He leaned close and muttered, "Let's see if it breaks again." She didn't file a complaint, didn't call for help, didn't even raise her voice. She simply waited. And when the night drill began, the lights cut out and the comms crackled to life. That's when she taught them a lesson they'd never forget. But before you see what happens when silence turns into strategy, drop a comment with where you're watching from, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and stay sharp. Because this isn't revenge, it's control. And what happens when someone mistakes calm for weakness? The desert heat over the Fort Redwood didn't just weigh down, it shimmered, rippling off the sand like the whole world was exhaling backward. Spent brass glinted underfoot, scarred from a dozen reuses, grit fused with metal, sweat turned to salt on rough fabric. Authority buried itself in dust. Lieutenant Commander Avery Cross stood near the course perimeter, stopwatch in one hand, clipboard in the other. 36. Her uniform was razor-pressed, sleeves rolled one thumb's width below the elbow. The left side of her torso was bound tight beneath the fabric, unseen but unforgotten. A constant ache she carried in her breathing, never her stance. She didn't limp, didn't shift her weight. She stood tall, spine like steel, watching the movement drill play out like a map she'd drawn from memory. Across the field, 5 cross-branch candidates hauled stretchers with combat dummies, then switched to ammo cans and shoulder drags. The wind hissed with fine dust, and whistles from the training towers pierced the air every 40 seconds. Dust hung suspended, shimmering like static. On the far side, Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer trudged across the range as if he owned the dirt itself. Broad shoulders, strict beard line, that arrogant tilt of his jaw. The kind that says he thinks he can lead better than whoever stands above him. Trailing behind were Middle Corporal Dean Riker, all brawn and no awareness, and his Soantitu. Private Eli Turner, 21, too sure of himself, swinging his rifle prop like a toy he hadn't yet earned. They didn't bother hiding their contempt, didn't even try. "Must be nice," Mercer muttered, just loud enough for half the row to hear. "Giving orders after a year of recovery leave? Wonder if the enemy smells like paperwork now." Riker snickered. Turner followed, half a beat late. Cross said nothing, just kept writing on her clipboard. Her pen moved in deliberate, steady lines, the kind that didn't ask permission to stay calm. Mercer didn't stop, never did. "Heard they screwed your ribs back together with plates," he called out. "What did they use? Recycled canteen metal." The jab earned a short laugh from Hakeim Riker. From her post by the comm station, Private June Carter lifted her gaze. She'd caught the tail end of that sentence. Her eyes darted from them to Commander Cross, waiting for a reaction. None came. But June noticed something else. The way Cross's pen moved. Not just logging times, but recording names, distances. The angle of Mercer's approach. How Riker lingered too close. And how Turner's eyes followed the mockery like he was taking notes on how to repeat it. June had seen instructors write during drills before, but this felt different, colder, sharper, less evaluation, more evidence. Across the range, Petty Officer Hayes Amon lingered near the water station, watching it all unfold. 6 years at Fort Redwood. He'd seen the loud ones, the soft ones, and the ones who snapped. But never anyone absorbed humiliation the way Cross did. Not with weakness, but with precision. He made a silent mental note. Stay on the right side of whatever was coming. Cross clicked the stopwatch. Next pair. Drag and shoulder switch. Down and back. Time starts now. The corporals moved sluggishly, their effort half-hearted. Mercer took his sweet time reaching the dummy, his boots carving trails in the dirt like punctuation marks. Turner, passing by. Carter muttered under his breath. Didn't know SEALs came in broken models. June stayed silent, but her jaw tightened just enough. On the next lap, Cross stepped closer, eyes on their hand positions and grip transitions. Still no words, no emotion, just that quiet authority of someone measuring something deeper than speed or endurance. The kind of silence that unsettles people because it promises a reckoning. Mercer caught it and smirked, thinking her stillness meant surrender. The desert kept breathing. The brass kept sweating under the sun. But the tension, that was hers. She didn't need to yell or correct, just held her thumb over the stopwatch and her eyes on the moment someone decided the rules no longer applied. Everyone on the course could feel it. Something was going to give, and it sure as hell wouldn't be her. By the time the second circuit began, the sun leaned low, slanting light through the scaffolds in long, burning streaks. The heat hadn't faded. It had only turned gold, sharper, meaner. Cross stood at the midpoint line, clipboard set down, stopwatch ready. Her voice carried cleanly across the range. Firm, steady, not a single wasted word. Weighted carry relay, 50 meters down and back. Keep your load steady. If your form breaks, so does your time. Boots hammered the dirt, the rhythm of lungs and grit filling the air. Breaths in sync with effort, sand spraying under raw determination. It was the sound of bodies trying to prove something to someone who didn't need convincing. Mercer ran in the second column, every stride a mix of muscle and ego wound too tight. Turner pushed ahead, overreaching, desperate to impress. Riker lagged behind, shoulders hunched, sweat tracing lines down his temples. At the 20-meter mark, Turner's grip slipped on the weighted duffel, nearly spinning him sideways. Cross moved on instinct, 2 swift strides forward, catching it before it hit the dirt. "Recenter your stance," she ordered, calm, measured. Her hand reached toward his wrist to guide his balance, and that's when Mercer charged through. He wasn't supposed to. Column spacing was clear, but he broke it anyway, storming forward under the guise of speed. The sound came first, boots grinding into sand, air slicing apart. Then the impact. His knee crashed into her ribs, sharp and deliberate. A clean line of motion wrapped in fake momentum, too square to be a mistake, too cruel to be random. She folded slightly, breath punched from her chest in a low, harsh sound. Not a cry, more like air forced through gritted teeth. Then came the whisper, quiet enough for only 2 to hear. "Let's see if it breaks again." Cross froze. The world shrank to one sound, a brittle crack beneath her sternum, not loud, but final. Riker stopped mid-step. Turner's duffel hit the ground. Even the whistle from the tower stalled before it blew again. At the far end, June Carter, stared across the field. She'd caught that whisper, words carried by desert wind and the kind of malice that never needs to shout. Cross pressed a hand to her side. Her face didn't change, but her breathing turned shallow, tight, deliberate inhales through her nose, the kind that guards something already broken. "Finish your circuit," she said. The recruits froze, uncertain. I said, finish it. Her voice didn't rise, but it sliced through the yard like a blade. Mercer. Half smirked, hands on his knees, pretending exhaustion. Guess that plate didn't hold, ma'am. She looked at him once, cold, unreadable, then clicked her stopwatch, jotted a note, and walked off the line. Every step was even, calculated. The pain radiated through her ribs like live current, sharp, constant, demanding attention she refused to give. Each inhale made the fracture grind faintly, a pulse of pain in her ribs. She could taste copper at the back of her throat from biting down too hard. Still, her stride never changed. Her shoulders stayed square. Avery Cross had learned long ago that pain could scream all it wanted. Command came from the mind, not the body. 17 steps separated the training field from the medical bay doors, and she counted everyone. Not for distraction, but for discipline. Each number kept her focus forward, kept her from turning around and giving Mercer the proof he craved, that he'd gotten to her. No limp, no stumble, just absolute precision. Even her footprints were even, as if defying the pain to leave any trace of weakness. Behind her, Turner bent to lift the fallen duffel, his eyes flicking nervously toward Mercer, like a man suddenly realizing who he'd chosen to follow. June Carter didn't move. The words, "Let's see if it breaks again," echoed in her ears long after Cross vanished into the harsh white glare of the medbay. The medical wing at Fort Redwood always smelled like antiseptic and desert air, cold trying to pretend it could beat the heat. Cross sat on the edge of a steel table, boots still on, one hand braced over her ribs while the medic slid the X-ray plate under her arm. His hands were quick and professional, but his eyes betrayed the truth. "Deep breath," he said. She tried. The inhale caught halfway, sharp, shallow. The machine clicked twice, and before the image even finished rendering, his face fell. He didn't have to say it. The break showed clearly. 2 new hairline fractures along the same rib that had been rebuilt years ago, right where it split the first time. "Commander, this isn't something you walk off," he said softly. "You're looking at a minimum of—" "I'm not looking at anything," she cut in. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Just print the film. Protocol requires—" "I'm protocol," she said, meeting his gaze. "Print it." Minutes later, she signed the limited duty waiver herself. No painkillers. No rest order. She wrapped the tape around her ribs with steady hands while he tidied the room. Every motion controlled, every breath an act of defiance that would have dropped most men in the field. When he left, she slowly unbuttoned her uniform top. The bruise had already begun to bloom, dark purple crawling across the scar line, spreading black where the old damage met the new. Same spot, same story. But this time, the ending would be different. Avery Cross pressed a hand against her ribs, feeling the deep bruise pulse beneath her palm. For a fleeting moment, the sterile white walls of the medbay vanished, replaced by cracked mud walls and the choking dust of memory. Rasira Valley, 2019. The explosion had erupted from the second floor of a ruined compound. She'd shoved a comms officer clear just before the wall collapsed. Her ribs went with it. 5 shattered in total. 2 crushed, 3 fractured. She could still remember the way the dust turned to glass in her throat, the suffocating weight of debris, and the broken rhythm of her own breathing. Wet, ragged, wrong. Then her CO's voice had cut through the static, steady and calm, as a Sunday sermon. Control isn't silence, Cross. It's command. She'd stayed awake through the entire extraction, giving coordinates for her own medevac while her lung collapsed. The corpsman told her later that most soldiers pass out from that kind of pain. She'd only looked at him and said, "Passing out's a choice." That was the thing they never understood. Pain was just data, and data could be used. The memory faded with the soft beeping of a monitor she didn't need. She tightened the tape around her ribs, wincing once, and only once. Outside the curtain, someone hesitated. A shadow. Boots turned halfway toward the exit. June Carter. "Come in or go," Cross said without looking up. June's voice came small but steady through the curtain. "Ma'am, he said it on purpose. I heard him. Every word." Cross's hands froze mid-motion. "You have a good memory, recruit?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then keep it. You'll need it tomorrow." June swallowed, nodded unseen, and stepped back. Cross set her jaw, pulled a pen from the tray, and flipped open her clipboard. On a fresh sheet, she wrote 3 words in block letters: control, pain, ego. Beneath them, another line: request authorization, reflex evaluation, range 47. She signed, initialed, and clipped it to the outgoing stack. Pain still pulsed like a live wire through her side, but her stance never shifted. If discipline had a sound, it was the click of her pen closing. The sun had already dropped behind the ridgeline by the time her request cleared. Reflex evaluation, range 47, approved. Signed under the training continuity clause, minimal oversight, no questions. Just a quiet digital checkmark beside Lieutenant Commander Avery Cross's name. At 19:30 sharp, she walked into the lower briefing room, not limping, not favoring her side, just walking. The low hum of floor lights mingled with the rustle of chairs and shifting boots. 5 names were on the roster. Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer sat with his arms crossed, chewing a toothpick like it made him untouchable. Corporal Dean Riker slouched beside him, lazy posture but eyes sharp. Private Eli Turner fidgeted, something nervous in his rhythm since that afternoon's drill. 2 Navy recruits sat quietly in the back, still too new to know when to look away. At the comms desk, Private June Carter pretended to recheck equipment logs, though her earpiece was already synced and her screen quietly recording. Cross set the file down on the podium, not loud, but enough to make everyone look up. Reflex evaluation, blackout navigation, 0 live fire, she began evenly. You'll move through range 47 in staggered pairs. Target is a beacon hidden within the simulated village. Teams will rotate. Only direct contact permits engagement. Any action outside protocol, verbal or physical, will be logged. Her voice wasn't cold, but it was surgical, precise and measured. Mercer raised a hand with a smirk. "Careful, Commander. The dark's bad for old injuries. You sure you'll stay upright?" Riker chuckled low. "Even I." Turner didn't laugh this time. Cross didn't look up. "Darkness shows timing," she said, "and timing shows discipline." Her eyes flicked to the monitor. "You'll be graded on both." Mercer muttered to Riker under his breath. "If she sneezes, her ribs'll snap like chalk." Carter Tatin Sixter heard it. So did Chakram. Turner. Neither spoke. As the men signed out their training gear, Cross tapped 2 fingers on June's desk. A silent signal. June gave a small nod and slid a compact auxiliary recorder across to her. "Comm frequencies are open. All teams transmitting live, June whispered. Even private chatters buffered now. Cross clipped the device into her vest pocket. Good. If they talk freely, let them. June's fingers trembled slightly as she synced the channels. This wasn't protocol. It was preparation. No, correction. It was premeditation. And now, June Carter was part of it. She thought about speaking up, maybe asking if this was really necessary, if it had to go this far. But then she remembered that sound. The dull, brutal thud of a knee colliding with ribs, the hissed whisper that followed, and the way Avery Cross had walked off afterward, composed while her body screamed beneath the surface, so June kept sinking. Behind her, Cole Mercer checked his training rifle, laughing with Dean Riker about something meaningless. They had no idea that every channel, every private frequency they'd used tonight, was already tagged for documentation. The darkness they were about to walk into had been designed, meticulously, for them. "Commander," June said softly, "what if they don't say anything?" Cross looked at her. "They will. Men like that always do. They can't help themselves." By 2200 hours, Range 47 was swallowed in darkness. The mock village stood silent, rows of shattered concrete walls, overturned barrels and blackout tarps flickering under the faint red glow of perimeter rigs. The wind slithered through hollow door frames, shredding the tarps until they whispered like ghosts across the field. It was the kind of black that made breath sound louder than footsteps. Craw stood at entry point Charlie, stopwatch in one hand, thermal goggles hanging around her neck. Mercer and Riker moved first, flash suppressors clipped on, mock weapons ready. Turner followed 10 minutes later with one of the Navy recruits. Cross didn't brief them again. She didn't need to. Boundaries had already been made clear, and if they hadn't understood them before, the dark would make them impossible to miss. Through her goggles, Cross watched 3 heat signatures move through the simulated village: Mercer, Riker, and Turner. Their formation was a mess. Mercer had already broken spacing, charging around corners without checking clearance. Riker trailed behind, just far enough to deny accountability, while Turner moved with hesitant, jerky steps, stopping too long at every intersection. Inside the operations station, June Carter monitored the feed, watching the comms buffer every word, every breath. Her finger hovered above the red mark hotkey that tagged audio for command review. The mics weren't hidden. The men had simply forgotten they were live, or maybe they just didn't care. Near the compound's southern wall, Mercer's voice crackled low over the open frequency. "If she comes near me again, I'll finish what I started." Riker's reply followed, faint and amused. "Thought you already did. Felt the crack, didn't drop her." "Those ribs'll snap clean this time. I'll make sure of it," Mercer added. Silence hung for a beat, then a soft click as June tagged the moment. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't flinch. Just confirmed the audio buffered, copied, and locked. A low voice slipped into her earpiece. Cross. Acknowledged. That was it. No escalation, no raised tone. June leaned forward anyway, sensing the shift in the air. Out on the range, Cross adjusted her goggles and stepped from behind the barrier wall with movements that were careful and exact. Even with fractured ribs, she moved like someone who no longer asked permission. The drill wasn't over, but the lesson was about to begin. Mercer's boots scraped concrete as he ducked into the shadowed interior of a half-demolished shoothouse. A dim beacon pulsed red in the far corner, his prize. He called it out. Riker huffed behind him, catching up. "Told you. Too easy." Mercer reached for the beacon with one arrogant hand. Then a second silhouette filled the doorway. No fanfare, no theatrics. Lieutenant Commander Avery Cross. Framed in the faint bleed of red light. Rifle props slung. Envy goggles lowered. Voice calm. Assessment continuation. Engage only on contact. Mercer froze, then slowly turned. You sure your ribs can take it, Commander? He sneered and charged without waiting. His move was obvious. Shoulder down, lead foot driving. Cross sidestepped the impact, hooked her left arm inside his elbow, and redirected his momentum. She dropped her weight, torqued his wrist, and Mercer pitched forward, the mat swallowing him with a dull thud. She released him instantly. No show, no flourish. Riker flinched. He stepped forward. That's not in the protocol. You're still standing. Comms are open, someone reminded. Riker hesitated. Mercer just grunted, spun, and rolled to his feet, then charged again, angrier this time. Sloppy now. Cross rotated, slipped beneath his right arm, twisted her hips, and swept his legs out from under him. He hit the mat harder that time. The air knocked clear from his lungs. She never raised her voice. Turner had just reached the doorway, frozen mid-step, and did not move in to stop it. Cross-faced Riker. Next. One contact left. Proceed. He raised both palms. I'm good, he said. She nodded. Maintain your position. Mercer tried to push up, gasping, pride and oxygen both running thin. He wasn't finished. Pride drove him into one last, reckless lunge. No technique, just a wild grab for her collar, trying to use weight to bully her. Cross had seen it 3 moves ahead. She shifted her center, caught his wrist in mid-reach, and used his momentum to spin him into a standing armbar, controlled, not crushing, only enough to hold. His shoulder sockets strained. He gagged between breaths. Yield or break, she said quietly. He twisted, kicked, did everything he could to escape, but every struggle only tightened the hold. Yield! He finally spat through clenched teeth. Cross released him at once. He collapsed to his knees, sweat pooling on the concrete. Cross stood above him, face hidden by envy goggles, breath short but even. Her other hand hovered near her ribs. Her fingertips skimmed the edge of the fracture. No, she said. You did. She produced the auxiliary recorder from her vest, clipped it on, and held it up where he could see. Conduct. Documented. Mercer's expression contorted, rage braided with disbelief. You can't use that. You set it up. You made the threat, she replied. You bragged about intent. All I did was complete the evaluation. She shifted her head toward the doorway where June Carter now stood. Silent witness, headset still live. Silent witness, headset still active. Recruit, confirm comms were live? Yes, ma'am. Confirm his words are recorded? Word for word. Mercer slumped against the mat, breathing hard. For the first time since that brutal knee strike, Avery Cross let her hand drop from her side. She didn't show pain. She showed control. Consider this contact, she said quietly. Fully documented. 800 hours, Command Room 2, East Wing. No flags, no ceremony. Just a long table and a playback monitor already queued. Captain Samuel Reed, Senior Operations Commander at Fort Redwood, sat at the head of the table. Lean, precise, known for skipping small talk. On one side sat Lieutenant Commander Avery Cross, ribs bound tight beneath her uniform, clipboard flat before her. Opposite her, Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer, visibly restless. Arms folded like this was still a contest. Beside him, Corporal Dean Riker, and outside the door, Private Eli Turner, standing as a silent witness, only to speak if called. At the far end, Private June Carter sat with a playback device and a printed transcript. "Begin with the audio," Reed ordered. June pressed play. The speakers filled with Mercer's voice, recorded through comms Channel 3, range 47. "If she steps near me again, I'll finish what I started. Those ribs'll snap clean this time." Silence followed, then Riker's faint chuckle. "Thought you already did." Another pause, heavier. Reed clasped his hands. "Recruit, was this audio altered in any way?" "No, sir. Captured live from the field recorder. Buffered through comms. Standard autolog protocol." Reed turned his gaze to Riker. "Corporal." Riker hesitated, like I didn't think he meant it seriously. But he said it. "Yes, sir." Mercer leaned forward. "That was banter. Dark humor. You've all heard worse in the field." Reed didn't flinch. "Is that your defense?" Mercer snapped. "Commander Cross staged this. She set us up, trapped us in the dark." Reed raised a single hand, the kind of gesture that stops careers mid-sentence. His eyes turned to Cross. "Why didn't you file a formal report after the initial contact?" "Because they would have forgotten it," she said steadily. "This way, they remember. You came back to lead a drill with fractured ribs." "I led a protocol-verified reflex assessment, Captain," Cross replied calmly. "Every move was within standard. Every action measured. Every contact was logged. Every reaction was measured. I have no regrets about how I handled it." Reed tapped the transcript folder once. "But you recorded him." "No paperwork needed," she said, nodding toward June. "He did." Reed's eyes flicked back to Mercer as the man opened his mouth, but Riker stayed silent. Captain Samuel Reed rose slowly. "Intent is now on record," he said. "Physical assault occurred, followed by a verbal confirmation to escalate." He fixed his gaze on Mercer. "You are relieved of instructional duties. Pending review, you're reassigned to admin. You will have no further contact with Commander Cross or her teams." Then he turned to Riker. "Your failure to report the comment makes you complicit. You're removed from the evaluation circuit." And to June, "Recruit, well done." He snapped the folder closed. "Lieutenant Commander Cross, you maintained composure, exceeded protocol expectations, and restored this facility's standards," Reed said. She nodded once, sharp. "Thank you, sir." As Reed stood to leave, he paused. "You could still file assault charges," he added. "You still can." Cross didn't flinch. "I already did," she replied, tapping the transcript. "Just not on paper." That afternoon, the mess hall felt louder, not with laughter, but with a heavy hush. Conversations petered out mid-bite. The scrape of forks seemed louder than usual. When Mercer walked in with his sleeves rolled up, pretending nothing had happened, the room shifted. He moved down the serving line and nobody greeted him. Not Ortega, not anyone. Two Navy recruits at a table leaned over their half-eaten pasta. "It's true," one whispered. "He said it over comms, gonna snap her ribs again." "Word for word," the other replied. "And she still dropped him?" The first shrugged. "Didn't even hit first, just waited." Across the hall, June sat with her headset coiled by her plate. She didn't speak much, didn't have to. Everyone already knew she'd made the recording. Sergeant Holt slid into the seat opposite her. Ex-Ranger, 2 deployments in Iraq, the kind of seasoning you only see from real combat. "We get loud instructors here all the time," he said quietly, stirring his food. "But what she did, that was a lesson. Not just for them," Holt said quietly. "For all of us." June looked up. You think they'll forget? Holt shook his head. Not a chance. You don't forget watching someone break without breaking. He stirred his coffee, lost in thought. I've seen guys snap after being disrespected, throw punches, file complaints, blow up their careers. But her? She didn't shout, didn't swing. She documented it. Let the system work the way it's supposed to. He looked straight at her. That's the difference between reacting and responding. One makes you feel better for an hour. The other changes the whole damn culture. June nodded slowly, understanding settling in deeper this time. The hall fell silent again as Lieutenant Commander Avery Cross entered, uniform immaculate, ribs still taped, posture flawless. She didn't glance around or wait for acknowledgement, just moved with that same deliberate rhythm, tray in hand, steps even, breath shallow but steady. No one said her name, no applause. But across the room, a row of recruits straightened their backs just a little more. Riker kept his eyes on his plate. Mercer Yidu was nowhere to be seen. As Cross passed June's table, she gave a small nod. June returned it. No smile, no gesture, just quiet recognition. Two people who knew exactly what had been said, what had been done, and why nothing more needed to be spoken. Cross paused near the exit, catching a fragment of air that seemed to hold a memory. Then she said softly, to no one in particular, "Pain fades. Conduct stays on record," and she walked out. Would you have stayed silent if someone bragged about breaking you on purpose? Do you think discipline hits harder than revenge, especially when the whole room is watching? Let me know in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if this story reminded you that calm isn't weakness but control, hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure the bell icon is on, so you never miss a mission like this. Share this video with someone who still thinks silence means submission, and remind them some people don't raise their voice when they're angry. They raise the standard. We post new stories every day, so stick around, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, with another mission from Old Bill's Tales.